In part 2 of our video, we're going to be talking about and demonstrating the hot water soup or the hot water treatment to bring the foam back to life. We'll be talking about reinforcing some weak areas and doing some crack repair. Let's get started.
As you can see, we've had a bit of a change of venue. We're now here in the kitchen to get to the stove and some hot water. One of the first things we want to do in our repairing and refinishing our model is to give the model a hot water bath. You may have read about that. The EPO foam, the little foam beads that make up the model, will re-inflate. So if you've gotten some bruises or dents in the model, by applying some hot water to the model, a lot of times you'll be able to get those little beads of foam to re-inflate, bringing the model back to the shape it was in, or at least very close to it, allowing you to have smaller numbers of dents to fill with our next step, which is going to be using some lightweight spackling. So let me just show you just briefly how that works. I've got a tub of water here. If you've got a larger roaster with you, you can certainly use that. I bring the water up to about 160 to 170 degrees. Boiling is too hot. Water that's too hot will cause the foam to bubble and to get that popcorn appearance, so I try to keep the water hot but not boiling. So I have the cowl right now, and it's got a lot of dents. When I got the paint off it, I found a lot of faults in the foam that the paint was covering up. So in this case, I'm just going to place the cowl in the hot water, allow it to sit there for a while, and I'm just going to check on it as I go to make sure that I don't get that popcorning effect as I keep it in the hot water. Now, with the foam hot, I can kind of use my fingers to kind of push those foam beads around, and I can see that I've gotten some nice filling in. I had a chip here that I'm going to need to massage a little bit. You can see where it's been bruised right there perhaps. I'm going to kind of move that foam around with my finger to try to fill that in. Those foam bubbles have not inflated as much as I want, so back into the water. Okay, I've gotten some really nice coming together here on some of this. It's going to make filling that in a lot easier. Now I'm going to move to another piece. Now this is one of the wing tips, and you can see I've got some crushing along the leading edge of the tip of the wing, and I've got some collapsing of the foam around here. Now some of it's scraped away and that's gone, so that's not going to come back. But with the hot water, some of it's going to reform, and so I'm just going to dip the wing in as I did with the cowling. Bring it out, kind of work that foam out, give it a little help. Turn the temperature down a little. I got a little, looks like it might have started to popcorn a little on me there, so I'm going to monitor that. While the foam's still hot, I can smooth it with my fingers. Back in the water. And a lot of that crushing on the leading edge has come back now. And so that's going to make it easier for me to fill. And the little chips that are gone, well, those I was going to have to fill anyway. And so one more piece to give you another idea of how you can make use of this EPO soup or hot water treatment. I'm going to use the tail end of the fuselage and a ladle to show you that you can just use it for general smoothing across a larger surface, even if you've got a pan that won't fit the whole piece. Okay, so here's the tail end of the fuselage down here. There are just a couple of bumps and bruises, nothing very significant down here, but they became visible after I got most of the paint off of it. And so rather than dump it in, you've got the tail wheel and wires and control rod throws and all that stuff. I'm just going to kind of put it in here and then use a ladle, and I'm going to use, like you're just kind of stirring up some chicken stock or some beef stock, thus the soup analogy. Again, come up with my fingers, kind of smooth it out, apply some pressure to help form the foam the way I need it. Looking pretty good. And I've got a little dent up here near the front where I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to continue to do this with some of the other pieces, and now you know how to make EPO soup.
Now, as I just mentioned, with the paint removed from the foam, I can see a lot of the damage that I was aware of. Plus, I found some other things that were broken. I found some cracks in the foam here that I'm going to have to deal with. A crack that was hidden right here that I'm going to have to deal with. Most of it, not surprisingly, around the area of the landing gear. That, of course, is what takes all the stress when you drop that landing in. So, let me give you a couple of pointers on fixing that foam as we get ready to move on. Now, on this largest crack, it's going all the way through the wing, around the landing gear support or an attachment plate here. And the previous modeler had tried to repair it because I can see some glue residue. Looked like he may have used some polyurethane glue. I, on the other hand, am going to use some CA. Got that here. It's the medium viscosity and gap filling CA. And so I'm going to try to get that deep into the hole. And because it goes all the way through, I'm going to flip it and bring it in from the other side. I've also got a toothpick here that I can help get that glue deep into the crease or into the fracture of the foam. So let's work on that here for just a second. And now from the other side to get that in there. So now I've got that pretty well covered with the glue. I'm going to press it in and out a couple of times to get it to work its way into that fracture. I don't want a lot of extra glue on the surface, but I'll be able to sand that off if I need to. Now at this point, there's two things you can do. One, if you're not in a hurry, you can just hold it. Take 10 or 15 minutes for the glue to set up, and you'll be in a good place. Some guys like to have the CA set naturally anyway. I'm not in a hurry, but I'm also want to show you one of the other things that you can use on this CA, and that is, of course, some Accelerator or kicker. Comes in little spritz bottles or in a little can like this, and what it's going to do is going to chemically cause that CA to bind, and it's going to bind the instant it comes together. So you want to make sure when you're using kicker that you have it where you want it. So now that top part is already dry, it's already stuck and bound, and now I'm going to mist it in that area on the inside that I've done. And so now that is bound, that is tight. There's no worries at all. So that's all there is for working with the CA to fix that crack and to get the kicker to seal it up in a hurry. Now on the landing gear plate on the other side, we've got the same thing happening, only to a much less extent. So I've got some looseness along here, there's a crack that goes around the bottom, and then as I pointed out to you before, I've got a crack that runs along here. Now, because those are not huge cracks, I'm going to use, in this case, some thin CA. That's going to be real runny, and so it's going to get down into those cracks without my having to try to help it along with that toothpick, because there just isn't room for that. So again, I'm just going to kind of drop some CA into that area. Get that in there. And then again, I've got it at the position I want it, from the position of it's in there nice and tight, ready to foam, and I'm just going to dust it with some kicker. Same on the top and the front. And then I've got that little guy right in here against the support, so back with the thin CA. Let that penetrate in there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinforce this area around where the spikes are and where the landing gear retracts go in. And I'm going to do that using some carbon fiber. Now, I've done a little of this work beforehand, but let me just describe briefly what I did. First, along this edge, I took about 1 millimeter or 2 off of the foam on the front edge right here so that I could stick my little piece of carbon fiber behind this peg. And then I did the same thing here, moved the foam back just a little bit so that I could put the carbon fiber along this edge and not conflict with the servo when it goes in there. And then I did the same thing along the back. And so all of those have been cut away now, and I did that off camera. Now let me show you a little bit about what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the carbon fiber. You can get the carbon fiber in strips. This is about, I don't know, 4 to 5 millimeters wide and 1 millimeter or 2/3 of a millimeter thick. And when you go like this, of course, it bends really easily. But if you apply the pressure up and down, it's really stiff. And so you can use this as a stiffening agent. And when you go beyond where your joint is, it allows the carbon fiber to be in contact with the foam across a broader area of the foam, allowing that force that's being put on it to be spread across the foam more evenly than just all concentrated as we are seeing in the landing gear area. Now, to cut the carbon fiber, I simply measure what I want to do. Sometimes I can cut it with a hobby knife and just kind of keep scratching through it, but most of the time I just kind of mark the cut with a hobby knife. And then I have this little rotary tool here, got it Harbor Freight for like $6 on sale, and a cutting disc. And then by turning it on, I can just drop it on the carbon fiber very gently, and it just takes a second or two to cut through. And so that's how I cut the pieces you're going to see me insert into the foam. This is really handy stuff. You should always, if you're flying foam models, you should always have a couple of strips of this in your workshop. So I've got my little piece of carbon fiber here. I'm just going to put a couple of dabs of CA. I'm going to use the gap filling CA. And then using my forceps, I'm just going to quickly drop it in to the areas that I've cut out for the CA, and then push it down into the channel that I made with my hobby knife. It's in there, and it's looking good. Not much to that. I'm going to do the same thing now to the other side here. Again, check that the channel is clear with my knife. Keep that in frame for you guys. Get the piece, a couple of drops of CA. And then drop it in the channel. So you can see here that the end of the landing gear cutout in the model is about right here. And I've got the piece of carbon fiber going probably a ½ inch further, maybe 1/4 of an inch. And then the same thing here. I've got it going through this little molded area for the wing into the area where the tabs are. So it goes beyond. So it's going to be spreading out that force just a little bit further than we would have if we just put it against the little stubs there. Now the last piece, we're going to do essentially the same thing here. And this one is not going to go behind, it's going to lay on the surface, so I've cut it back as well. And again, this time I won't put CA on both surfaces, only one, since only one is in contact with the model. And I'm just going to lay that in there. Again, the channels were extended beyond. And it's just right in there. So you can see then what I've done is I've kind of made a box of this carbon fiber all around the area where the retract is going to be, to add some strength, because we know from the repairs we've made already that that's the part that really takes the hits when you land. So I'm going to do the other side now, and then we'll move on to the next part of the reconstruction.